Yo, yo, yo. We just need a couple minutes to get everything. Hello from Melbourne. What's going on? Love that place. Yeah, Neox, it's going to be all recorded and I'll try to upload it to. Oh, look at that. To YouTube later tonight. But you'll be able to catch it on the recorded live stream in the live section on YouTube at any point. I generally try to leave those up unless it's something super controversial that I'm talking about. Then what I do is for those, I end up deleting them from the live stream and then I move the content just to the members section. So I don't get in too much, in any more trouble than I'm already getting in, if that makes sense. Where's the... We missed a couple. Give me a second here. Still trying to get all the... Oh, I think I know what's going on. Ads, you're breaking the system with the blue check mark on your avatar. Let me see if I can correct this. Okay, now I just need to hop over to Restream and get that guy working for that chat. And then we will be ready to go. Totally understand, Nix, 100%. So feel free to check in later when you have more time. All right, let me see if I can get the Restream stuff working. Since I can see that we're only getting the... There we go. Okay. Hey, Morwick and Justin. Let me fiddle with Claude for just a second here, guys. Apologies. Feel free to go grab a soda, popcorn, whiskey, whatever you need. We're going to get into the Anthropic Fable stuff, superintelligence, and just general, I think, AI musings and collab code stuff. Okay. Also, we're getting chat from Restream. Chat is up, but it. We need to do a quick shutdown and restart of GCC, but we'll get that sorted in just a second. Willie, what is this? What's that paper? Can you drop a link? That might be the paper that... Is that the paper from Yann LeCun that just came out? Awesome. Thanks, Nix. Yeah, I'm trying my best to tell it to you guys as straight as possible, at least from what I know. But I don't always get it right. But you can be sure that I'm not going to promote big tech or billion-dollar valuation startups and their agenda if it's not real. Oh, look at that. Okay. We have all the chats kind of coming in now. That's great. Hey, Marie. Excellent. Thanks, Willie. If I can click this directly in GCC. Oh, yeah, man. This is like 100%. This is absolutely what I've been arguing for. I don't mean it in like I'm smarter or so much ahead of where they are. I don't know. This is like I deeply care about this stuff, so I think about it. And I'm also not hindered by the bureaucratic BS that a lot of the big tech folks have to deal with. But it's great to see that DeepMind is figuring this out. Maybe they'll start. So is artificial superintelligence, I'm guessing, from artificial general intelligence, which is basically totally bogus, and at least that's my take. It's just sort of a nonsensical thing that people talk about, in my opinion. But it doesn't really mean anything, and it's, I don't know. It's kind of like when we beat the Turing test, which, I don't know, maybe happened 4 years ago with ChatGPT. And then it was like, okay, so we beat the Turing test. Like, what now exactly? And that's because the Turing test was kind of a neat idea to hold into your head, but it didn't really mean much or do much for us. So I have similar views about this whole AGI thing. Is like I think I know what they're trying to say, but I think that one, the approach of trying to do generalized intelligence in a single system is, I have a very hard time understanding how you can build a system that would do that and still be computationally tractable and fiscally viable in like a sustained way. So I think that's, at least for what I care about, it rules it out as something that I would deeply think about. But clearly a lot of people at least used to care. But now it seems that people are making this shift to superintelligence. Thank goodness. Because this, guys, I think we actually can achieve, and we have. Compilers, calculators, spell checkers. These are all examples of superintelligence that exist today. Okay, I think that we have our crews mostly arriving. Purple, what's going on, brother? And, man, I still don't love the latency between these chats. Let me see if I can. Okay. Today we're getting into, we're going to start with Anthropic Fable, because it is a bit of a fable. It's a pretty apt name they picked, because it's one big story in the world of fantasy. At least that's my take. And I'll kind of explain the things that I think I know and then the stuff that's happened with it in an extremely short period of time. And a lot has happened in a real short period of time. All right. I think we've got a quorum. We've got maybe like a couple dozen people, so I think we're ready to start flying. All right, so for many of you may be already aware, but let's just, for those of you that aren't, there's this huge amount of news that's happening right now with Anthropic's new Fable model, which is supposedly based off of Mythos. But before we can get into Fable, we have to walk back a little bit and look a little bit into Mythos for this story to kind of make sense. So let me give a brief background on that piece, and then we can start talking about the madness, the hype, and the nonsense that's going on with Fable. Okay, so Anthropic has a number of models that are in different families. There's the Sonnet family, which is mostly for writing, I guess. I don't really use Sonnet. I mostly just use Opus. And then there's the Opus family, which is principally used for code, I guess. People largely use it for... There we go. This is my OCD kicking in. I like these to be perfectly aligned. So there's Sonnet, and I think you can use Sonnet for free. At least kind of the weaker version of it. And hey, Juan, yeah, we actually just kind of got started, so you're in a good spot. Okay. Sorry, I'm chatting with Claude as we're trying to level up GCC at the same time I'm talking to you guys. I should stop multitasking. All right. So you have these different families, and the Opus family is largely what drives Claude Code. So a lot of coders use it, but what's really interesting is, for those of you that are deep within AI, I recommend you use the Opus family for everything. And the reason for that is Opus, to the best of my knowledge, has more ability to do logical processing and semantic reasoning. I mean, it's not complete, but clearly there's some part that's there. And so this is very helpful because I don't know that the Sonnet models do. And almost all the stuff that we're going to work on, we kind of want it to be logically cohesive. So even if you're writing an email or you're writing an essay or something, you probably want that email and the essay to be logically cohesive. And Opus is specifically designed to build things that are logically cohesive. And you need that for programming because code has to kind of follow a sequential order. If the sequential order of events is not respected, then the code's not going to do what you want it to do. It'll do them in the wrong order. Anyway, so Opus is just killing it. And as with all things in AI hype these days, the big thing is they need to kind of continue to level this stuff up so it's better tomorrow than it is today. But they're absolutely running out of steam. And historically, the way that they had done this, at least in the early days with OpenAI, is they just sort of added more compute to it. And obviously there's more going on here, but the simple solution is you just make bigger models, and then because sequence-to-sequence models that are built with a progressively increasing state can tend to do better as the state increases. It's sort of like, think of it as the RAM that you have on your computer. 16 gigs is better than 4 gigs. And I think we all kind of know this because just more memory is useful. So you can kind of think of as the models that are sequence-to-sequence models that have some idea of memory will generally do better for hard problems as they get bigger. The problem with that approach, though, is you're adding like significant compute overhead. Hey, Yui. Each time you fan out. And that's just generally not a good philosophy on trying to make things better. Generally, what you want to do is kind of fix the algorithm so it's richer, or you have better training data. There's like, those are the more reasonable approaches, because then the solution itself will stay flat at the power consumption, but the efficacy will increase. It'll do Dennard scaling kind of thing. So anyway, as Anthropic is growing, I think they're starting to figure out this idea of having systems that do semantic reasoning. So they started to hire a bunch of people that are experts in things like formal logic, verification, SAT solvers, satisfiability modulo theory or theorem solvers, SMT solvers, formal methods, this type of thing. And then you bind the formal method stuff with the stochastic models, and you get better results. It's very similar to diff. Diff isn't fully formal, it's semi-formal, but it's formal. And then that formalism is sort of what makes it help the stochastic models do better. All right. So because they have this new group of people that are really strong with verification, validation, and they've figured out, Jalisco, what's going on, brother? I actually want to talk about you specifically in this stream at some point. So I'm glad you're here. So now Anthropic has a whole bunch of these experts in verification and formal methods. They started to realize, I think, that this is a really important piece that they had been missing. And I think that this is part of the big shift in the improvement in Opus. That prior to maybe Opus 4. Maybe before they got to the version 4 systems, Opus, at least from my peripheral view and what I was hearing about it, I didn't actually use it. I only got involved once Opus got to 4, because then the people I was talking to, they finally were like, look, it's actually pretty legit now. And there are a lot of good things with the Opus 4 family. I think I'm on to 4.8 now or something. And Claude did try to upgrade me to Fable yesterday, and I was like, pass, hard pass. I know enough about it. And by the way, now, as I understand it, Fable's not even available. Fable's gone. And it's not because it's this all-powerful, omnipotent, whatever thingamabob. I think it's for other reasons. Mostly it's feeding into the hype machine. Because people really love the idea of getting something they can't have. And I think Anthropic is just going to play into that like crazy. Because based on what I understood from the US's mandate on this, which we're going to get into in a second, they didn't actually mandate that Anthropic remove Fable. They just demanded that it had export control. We'll look at that in a second. Anyway, so you've got this improvement in the logical capabilities of the Opus family, and then suddenly I think they start to realize, because it can do this deeper semantic reasoning, you can use this to try to tease out security vulnerabilities. That's like, oh yeah, what if instead of using it for code, you use it to break code? And this brings out the Mythos family. So Mythos is announced several months ago or something, and it's going to be the best thing that we've ever seen. It's like so amazing, and it's so powerful and so dangerous. We don't even know if we can release it. So they hyped the hell out of this and talked about how they've run it on these systems that can find all these security vulnerabilities, and oh my gosh, we can't release this because it's going to find all these massive security vulnerabilities in open source that nobody knows about, and then hackers are going to exploit that, and the entire open source community is just going to be destroyed. So they pitched this story, this fable, and after they release it to, I think, a small subset of security experts, what a lot of the security experts that are not drinking the Kool-Aid came out and said, at least based on what I read, maybe you guys have seen different things, but what I saw from some actual security experts that have credentials that back up that they actually know what they're doing and they're giving it kind of a fair shake, is they said, yeah, okay, Mythos can find security vulnerabilities. Yep, it can. And some of them are pretty interesting. But there is no case that we found where the Mythos model found a security vulnerability that either people didn't already know about or had been an existing exploit type that had been previously reported. Now, again, just to be totally fair, is they were saying that it could find these security vulnerabilities, so it did actually do that. Cool. By the way, the mentor system that we've had for 4 years has found thousands, maybe tens of thousands of security vulnerabilities. This is not a new thing. This has existed for a very long period of time. And in fact, many of the other models can also find security vulnerabilities. A lot of this is really to kind of just feed into the hype narrative of, wow, look, it can do something new and amazing. And it's so powerful, nobody is going to get access to it. And then they had this big blowout fight with the U.S. government, and that went in really wacky directions. They were going to let, I think, the DOD or DOW or whatever use it, but then they backed out of that, and I guess from that, the U.S. government said they can't be trusted as a supply chain vendor. It got like all kinds of nasty, and then OpenAI jumped into this and basically said, oh, we'll work with you. And then, I mean, it was a bunch of like soap opera level drama, especially around something that is, I don't know, not all that impressive. But this is an important piece of the story because once Anthropic pissed off the U.S. government, the U.S. government is sort of not used to not getting what they want. And Anthropic, for all of the hype and the buzz and all that stuff, they're not a titan. I mean, they do have a lot of other people's money that have invested in them, but their overhead is massive. They're in the red significantly, and they're not a real tech giant like Microsoft or Oracle or Google, Amazon, where they could like throw down. Anthropic is just kind of a baby. And if it survives after it IPOs and becomes something amazing, I think we're going to find out. I actually quite like the Opus model, so much so that I'm building a GCC is built entirely with Claude Opus, mostly 4.6, I think. Maybe I'm upgraded to 4.7. I don't know. It doesn't seem to make too big of a difference, but it's able to help me kind of get the job done with a lot of babysitting. A lot. Anyway, this tension between Anthropic and the US government is critically important to this Fable story. You have to know this as background to understand what's really going on with Fable and Anthropic's play in this space. I wonder why GCC is printing that out 3 times. Let me just give it a quick notice on this. Give me one. Hey, Sleepy. Good to see you. You are printing out Sleepy's comments 3 times, but she's only typing it once. Please fix that bug. Okay. Claude continues to work for me, even while I'm live streaming. Okay, so this relationship is massively damaged between the United States government and not being able to use Mythos and Tokyo. Awesome, man. This is great. We're really going global. What time is it in Tokyo? So OpenAI, I think, steps in to try to work with the government, but, OpenAI compared to Anthropic, at least the current climate, the models are maybe not as good. And, yeah. Okay. Claude's given us triple output for everybody. We're seeing triple output for almost everybody on the chat. Fix, fix, fix. All right. So then Anthropic, needing to continue to create as much hype and buzz as possible, they create this Fable model. And what Fable is, as I understand it, and for those of you that are experts, please correct me if I'm getting this not exactly right. Fable is essentially a guardrailed version of Mythos. So the idea is, well, the Mythos model is so awesome. If we can release this before we IPO, people will see the amazingness of it. But the US government is previously deemed this as like an export control kind of thingamabob. So we can't make Mythos publicly available. And by the way, part of the reason why they can't make Mythos publicly available is they did it to themselves. They're the ones that said, oh, Mythos is super powerful and it can do all this stuff that is crazy hackerish behavior. And they created that narrative. And then people either bought into that narrative or they're reverse farming them. They're like, okay, so you create this narrative, we're going to basically fall in line and support that narrative and basically make this like an export control thing, saying you can't release it now. You said yourself it's too powerful, so you can't release it to the public. And now they're kind of getting gamed by the United States government because they sort of wouldn't work with DOD. So they create this new Fable 5 thing, which is supposedly Mythos with guardrails. And then they talk about how it's this mind-boggling thing. We can go on to Anthropic's website right now and here you can see, what is this? Just yesterday, Claude Mythos 5 and Fable 5 access unavailable. Okay, we're suspending it because, again, it's too powerful and you guys aren't ready for it. And this is playing perfectly into their hype narrative, because people that don't know better are likely going to see this and be like, oh my gosh, did you hear about what Anthropic did? They created something that's too powerful to be released. And then people that aren't informed will continue to spread this. And now, with the IPO right around the corner, there'll be a lot of clueless people, not dumb people, just people that have been misinformed, that are going to seriously drink the Kool-Aid and go and make that IPO insanely good for Anthropic. Again, I want to also be fair. I do think that Anthropic has good models. I don't think their company is worth $900 billion, and I'm fairly certain they don't either, which is related to the rush on the IPO, which I want to get into after we talk about this Fable thing. Because this rush for the IPO, if you look at it in a very serious way, Sam Altman, Dario Amati, and Elon Musk are already richer than, like, small countries. So why would you give up control of your company if you're already killing it? That's not exactly what's going on. SpaceX is different. SpaceX does have technology outside of XAI, and they've had that for a very long time. So their IPO that just happened yesterday or something, I think that we'll see if that stays level. But I do believe that there is technology that's real with SpaceX, and they're more than just a one-trick pony. But Anthropic and OpenAI, basically, the only thing they kind of got is their AI software. Anyway, so they release Fable for a short period of time. Maybe it was a week. It was just a couple days. And then they self-report on all this. By the way, whenever a company self-reports, you usually want an unbiased third party, unless they have serious scientific credentials and it's being done like in a peer review process way, where it's deeply scrutinized by peers before it's allowed to be published. You probably don't want to ever trust any of the things that they're self-promoting, especially when they've been known to lie. So all these numbers, I mean, you can look at how they have manipulated a lot of the benchmarks and the numbers. Just as an FYI, my recommendation is be very careful on trusting any of this silliness. Okay, so they release Fable, and then within a very short period of time, the U.S. government comes out and says you cannot use this if you are not in the United States. Now, I want to be honest here. I think that the U.S. government is doing this to hurt Anthropic. I don't know that they even care if it is too powerful or not. I think that Anthropic done pissed them off, and they're not going to let that slide and remind Anthropic who's boss constantly. So I think they're leaning into the fact that Anthropic said themselves this is too dangerous to have, and so, yeah, we agree with you, Anthropic, and so you can't actually let anyone outside of the U.S. use this. Now, keep in mind that it was just an export control thing. They didn't have any issues with people in the United States using it. Anthropic said Friday night, U.S. government had ordered the company to suspend all access for all foreign nationals. Foreign nationals. So here's the real trick, guys. if you have the super powerful model that you really want to get out, desperately want to get out, because it's the best thing ever, and you know it's only restricted to just foreigners, you can probably find ways to limit that access. It's probably not going to be perfect, but it's probably going to get you 90% of the way there. Especially now that Claude, I think, or Anthropic has this new full verification on users just to create a new account. Like it has this full ID check on you to figure out who exactly you are, right? So supposedly this stuff is built into the Anthropic infrastructure. And if that exists, then you would have some sense. And then, you could go further and do IP sniffing. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that you could try to do. Now, of course, IPs can be faked with VPNs, right? So again, this isn't necessarily foolproof, but you could make a true effort to try to keep it active so people could see the amazingness of it, and then that would bolster your IPO. Instead of doing that, they basically say they're going to shut off all access to Mythos 5 and Fable 5 before anybody really had a chance to use it. And I got to tell you, of the things that I've seen on people reporting back to me personally or posted online about Fable and Mythos, what they've told me is it sucks. It's a token burning machine, especially Fable. Mythos supposedly is burning through tokens like crazy. And again, it gets back to this whole sustainability thing. Just because you can do it doesn't mean I think that this will be sustainable technology, because if it's not within some reasonable cost window, who can afford to use it? So a lot of the early reports from Fable and Mythos users, from what I've seen, have been, it is not good at all. People that I follow on Threads and on X have been showing screenshots of their interaction with it, basically saying it's just as bad as the old models, except now it burns more tokens in the process of sucking. And that doesn't sound all powerful. So I think what Anthropic did is read the room, the early signals, and saw that, people are not super impressed. It is burning through a bunch of tokens. We already know that because it's designed to be this uber massive thing, with them trying to think sort of that they're going to get traction on this because it can do this new security stuff, and they're not going to care about the fact that it burns through 10x or 100x more tokens. Yeah, they will, right? Everybody's going to care at some point, even the uber wealthy, if it's costing too much money. So they're reading that room and seeing that the public is not impressed. Then they're looking at the situation with the U.S. government, with the export control, and they think to themselves, we can have like a perfect storm here. We can just wipe it from public access, and it will lead into the narrative that the U.S. government is creating, which is saying it's too powerful for other countries to have, and so foreign nationals can't have it, and then we'll be seen as the good guys. We're the good guys now, right? Because we agree with the U.S. government. This is just too dangerous and too amazing, everybody. We've got to pull it until we can somehow get the stuff under control. And now what you have is a piece of technology that people only got a glance at. And that early glance of it was not really in their favor. But you have a hype system that is going to strongly support the nonsensical things that are going to be in favor of their IPO. And this is exactly what I think is going on right here. I don't believe that Mythos or Fable 5 are doing anything that is wildly powerful. Some of the security people that looked into it early on told me that it was massively underwhelming. And yeah, I was actually about to play with Fable 5 last night, but it had already been pulled by the time I went to go screw around with it. And so I didn't get a chance. So this is my high-level take on what the story is, what the deal is with Fable. I think if you missed it, then you didn't miss anything. The stories that Anthropic continues to tell are, it feels like almost 100% hype at this point. And it is going to be real interesting. I want to go back a little bit to this broader context of the IPOs, because I think this part is going to be relevant to all of us that use AIs. And I think that the price wars that are already starting are going to be very interesting. Yeah. Aspeth, good to see you, brother. So now let's look at this IPO situation that we have evolving. I think it was yesterday that SpaceX did their IPO, and from what I've read, it's this resounding success. And that part is not too surprising for me. For the three that were going to IPO, as I was mentioning, I thought that SpaceX actually has something real, which is their Starlink stuff, their rockets, all of that. And XAI being part of that, it's like, I don't know, that really matters. And that's great that they had this success with the IPO. However, the byproduct, Call's asking, how can I talk so much about it when I didn't even try it out? Yeah, so Call, so the way that I can talk so much about things that I haven't tried out is I just read, right? So I read a lot, and from what I read, it informs me on what's going on. So there's lots of things that I haven't tried out that I learn about. And then through the reading, I get educated and then try to share the information. I can tell you pretty much that all the people that are reporting on the Fable and Mythos stuff have also not used it. So like the New York Times and stuff, they're not using it, but they're still reporting on it. So what I'm reporting on, Call, is not necessarily the efficacy of Mythos or Fable, but rather the narrative that they're trying to spin. By the way, if you used it, please share what you found. I would love to hear that. There are people that have reported out some of their usage on Mythos and Fable on threads that I was reading, and their use was pretty abysmal. And a lot of that, as I understand, was the guardrails that they put on Fable were so strong that if you said even the wrong word, then it would shut you down. So, for example, one guy said the word cyber. All he said was the word cyber. He didn't say anything else. And then it switched from Fable to Opus, 4.6. Some other guy was using Fable, and he was trying to check in code, and Fable got disabled before it even finished. So yeah, my speculation is Fable is possibly better than Opus. However, what is not clear to me is the price trade-off, because many people have reported out that the usage of tokens are significantly increased when it comes to using Fable. And if it's 10x more tokens, but it only gives you a 2% increased efficacy, I don't know that that is necessarily a good trade-off. It goes back to that whole flying coach versus flying first class. Maybe for some people, right, the super wealthy, maybe they can use it, but I think for the rest of us, normal folks, Opus may still be the way to go. Anyway, so when we go back to the larger landscape of the IPOs, the part that I really care about, I don't really care about if the IPOs, if any of these companies are successful or unsuccessful. I mean, I hope they succeed and all their dreams are fulfilled. What I really care about is what the actual prices are going to be, and if LLMs will be a sustainable technology moving forward. This is my biggest concern. Yeah. So Artie, that's awesome that it found vulnerabilities in your APIs. I would be very interested to see if you try to, now that you know those vulnerabilities exist, if you try to use Opus 4.8 or whatever it is, to see if it can also find those vulnerabilities. That would be, I think, a somewhat interesting thing. Now, I wouldn't necessarily put it beyond Anthropic to downgrade the other models so they can't do those things, especially since we know Anthropic kind of has a history of doing this type of stuff when they're intentionally dumbifying former versions of Opus, so then the later versions will seem better. But I think, at least for me, I would love to know if you see different results, or if you see the same results, or what you actually find. And I think a lot of the GT community would probably want to hear about this as well. So if you're not on our Discord, Artie, we would love it if you join, and then share what you found with Fable, and then what you're able to potentially replicate with Opus. Anyway, so I want to go back to this IPO piece, because I think that this is the part that a lot of us probably deeply care about, because it's going to affect the pricing. Now, many of you are probably aware of the cost hike for GitHub Copilot that happened like a week ago. This is where GitHub Copilot cost, I think in normal cases it was like $29 a month. And that was a flat subscription, which is super gracious, I think. And as we've been discussing, LLMs cost a lot in compute. And if you're using them heavily, $29 a month is probably not coming anywhere close to covering the bill. But GitHub Copilot's path to existence has been free. It's all free. And a lot of that was to foster goodwill with the open source and development community, because they were basically saying, look, we trained Codex entirely on all of your code, which a lot of them were not super thrilled about. But the return of that is you get this system now that will help you with code. So this is our way of sort of saying thanks. This was, I think, a pretty reasonable way to promote this discussion. hold on a second. I just need to look at something real quick here. Okay. Yeah. All right. So what I kind of speculate has been going on with Microsoft internally is they've been footing the bill for the overhead for Copilot for many years. And they will do that, I think, very much like investors will subsidize the overhead for early startups, because this is a very common thing that the companies generally don't make money initially. You have to build a base, and then you have to slowly grow it. And then once you establish yourself and you're kind of a known, trusted entity, then you can potentially start to make money on these things, right? So first, GitHub Copilot was free. Then it was paid, or there are paid tiers, but I think there was still the free version. And then there was no free version, just the paid. And now there is paid with a token system. Now, the part that I think a lot of us that actually are using AI in our workflows, the part that is the scariest, at least for me and probably many of you, is the possibility that the actual cost of the AIs will significantly skyrocket and then destroy the workflow that you are relying on currently, making you have to rethink and redesign everything that you're doing. And some of the stories that are emerging from the GitHub Copilot system are telling us just that, right? People are saying, I can't pay $3,000 a month for GitHub Copilot. It was costing me $50 a month. That's almost a 100x increase in price. I mean, that's insanity. That is not just like a Netflix increase where, hey guys, okay, it's now $14.99 instead of $11.99. Sorry. And then people kind of grudge about it and then say, okay, whatever, Netflix, your stuff's still good enough, but don't do it again. This is all right, come to Jesus moment. We're going to tell you what this really costs. Everybody else is charging on a per token basis, sort of. I mean, not exactly, because yeah, I guess that's true. But the way that they do the token pricing is a tiered system where you usually get significantly more as you go up the tiers. For example, I think with Anthropic, from Pro to Max, it's like, what is it? Maybe Pro is $50 a month and Max is $200 a month. So it's a 4x increase in price, but it's like a 10x increase in tokens. It's like a lot more tokens. So it kind of makes sense to make that jump. It seems as though, based on what I've read, that GitHub Copilot is basically doing a token pure approach. All right. How they're actually doing this is kind of inconsequential. What really matters is the larger landscape, because running LLM inference, specifically LLMs, is very expensive. And the way that they're making progressive improvements on the models is not keeping that cost flat. It's making it more expensive, right? Fable is better, but it's also significantly more expensive. Mythos is better, but it's significantly more expensive. What we really want is better at a flat price, or at least that's what I want. Denard scaling type of thing, right? All right. So now that Microsoft is no longer footing the bill, they probably were just moving money around and covering. This is now, I think, the first signal that the reality of having to pay for models has arrived. What I think is likely the next step, but it probably won't happen until after the IPO, is that the free models for OpenAI and Anthropic will also go away. They won't do that now because that's going to hurt the IPO, right? GitHub Copilot did it now. There's no IPO that's upcoming. The mothership of Microsoft is probably so pissed off at the billions of dollars of burn that they're like, yeah, do it. And we need to figure out how we can keep this alive, or we need to just shut down the entire Copilot product, right? Okay. So there's two general directions that I want to talk about in this new era of not having free LLMs. There's the startup path, because that's going to be one direction, and what that pricing looks like is going to be somewhat specific to those startups. And then there's the other path of big tech and LLMs used there, because this is different in that they could be supporting a loss leader. They could have a loss leader if they have another viable business segment inside of the company that is bolstered from the LLM loss leader. And if you don't know what a loss leader is, it's basically just this idea that you have this product and it loses money. You know that it loses money, but it's okay because it creates an avenue of revenue and profit that you wouldn't have if it didn't exist. Video game consoles are an example of this, right? Video game consoles almost always are costing the companies that are building them more money than what they actually charge for, but that's okay because they make up that revenue in the profits that they make from video game sales, membership accounts on their ecosystem, all of the other stuff. So it's a known loss leader and it's acceptable. Now, for companies that are like Anthropic or OpenAI, because they kind of only have the AI system, it can be a little bit of a loss leader, but probably not too much of a loss leader. And even in that case, they would need to have another business that is going to be significantly profitable from it losing money. One of the most obvious that Sam Altman has talked about is ads, right? They're talking about how these systems will never have ads, blah, blah, blah. And then now Sam's saying, no, it will. I don't use the ChatGPT systems that much anymore, so maybe they already have ads. That part's not clear, but that's a way to offset the loss leader, right? What I think is going to happen with the pricing for the startups that are about to IPO, first there's going to be a price war to bring the prices down. And OpenAI has already started this. I think they dropped the prices on some of their models, and now they're handing it off to Anthropic to basically have them match it. And this is really important to do pre-IPO, because if you're coming in with models that cost less, then you're potentially more attractive for the investors. This is just a short game. It's not what's really going to happen long term. And so what you're going to see probably over the next few weeks, few months, is that the model prices from the startups in particular are going to go down. OpenAI has already started doing it. Let's see if we can find OpenAI model price drops. Okay. OpenAI considers drastic price cuts, anticipating war for users with Anthropic. This came out 3 days ago. The company might lower prices for tokens, blah, blah, blah. Right. Okay. This makes sense to that narrative. This is really just a pre-IPO thing, and it's mostly just trying to construct a narrative. The good news is, over the next few months, what you may see personally is the token prices are dropping, and then my recommendation is farm them. This may be the last time for a very long time. Hey, Labyrinth. Yeah, no worries, brother. Good to see you. And yeah. So my recommendation on the cost reduction is to farm the hell out of them now. Go nuts. Know that you have basically from now until the next maybe a few weeks or a few months after they IPO, that they're going to be maybe at an all-time low price. It's not going to last. So if you're like a software developer and you're vibe coding or collab coding, go crazy. This may be your last opportunity. I mean, set those agents on fire. Launch up hundreds of sub-agents. Try to build all the things that you think you can build in your mind. If you're a advertising company, create all the videos and images or whatever. Like, use this as an opportunity where they are gaming the public, so game them back. This is to your advantage for this very brief period of time. Then what's likely to happen after they IPO and early investors can get out and all of this wacky stuff, people are going to start to see their books, and they're going to have to become honest and accommodate prices for the models that's actually a reflection of what they truly cost as an expense. This is where that dip that you saw is going to skyrocket way back up. And it's going to probably go significantly higher than anything you've ever seen before. It's probably going to be in line with the prices that you have seen or are seeing with GitHub Copilot. That's why following the GitHub Copilot signal is critically important, because it tells you what the actual prices may eventually be for all of the other LLMs. Be paying close attention to the GitHub Copilot thing, or at least I am. This is, it's basically informing me on what they really cost. They're not going to ever probably tell you what it really costs, but we do get to look into their P&L. So we get an overarching view of it. All right, now that's related to the startups, the companies that basically just Anthropic, OpenAI, Perplexity, and others that are doing their LLM thing. My long-term belief is we're going to shift to small language models. Right now, the small language models are not nearly at parity or even anywhere near parity of the LLMs, but I anticipate that with us in the community working to build those out in a very serious way, making each of them specialized for one domain, we can make them super intelligent, and then we will get something that is near parity but significantly more constrained on the domains as the LLMs. And then the beauty of that is once we do that, we can set it up so the SLMs are free. That basically, and big tech hates this. This is the exact opposite of what they want. That's why you generally never see them talk about SLMs. It's all about the large language models in the cloud and their APIs, and you got to do this. This is the best thing ever. They'll probably also, tell you that small language models are super dangerous, which is actually somewhat true. You have to run them in a sandboxed environment. Like there is, with all of that power, there is danger that it could be mistrained, misused, do erroneous things. But if we now take a peek over at big tech now. And now we're looking at the language models that are Google, Microsoft, Amazon, IBM. What do their prices look like? And are we going to see free models from them? Because it's different. Since they have existing business units that already make money, it's far easier for them to accommodate loss leaders than it is for single-focused startups to do this. For example, Sony and Microsoft have loss leaders in their consoles, and they've had that for a very long time. And Sony just absorbs it because Sony's huge and has all these other things going on. And then the video games themselves make up for that loss. They can only do it, though, because they get a percentage of royalties for all the video games that sell for that console, and they make it up from the subscriptions that you pay for things like the PlayStation Network or whatever. Same thing with Microsoft. So similarly, with big tech and their LLMs, the question then becomes, is there a way for those LLMs to function as loss leaders that benefits the company? With Google, I think it seems somewhat straightforward in terms of advertisement. Google, in my mind, is principally an advertising company. They do other things, but if you look at their revenue and you talk to people on the inside, they make the majority of their money from ad revenue. And they're really good at it. Because LLMs, I think, improve search, and because they get deeper information about a person in the context all around them, and people are trusting them maybe a little bit recklessly, I think LLMs as loss leaders within Google will probably work. That's my speculation. Awesome. Thanks, Artie. Appreciate it, man. I'll take a look at that maybe later tonight. And Artie, if you're not on the Discord, let me just drop the Discord link. If any of you are not on the Discord, it's free to join, free to be on there for forever. There's no cost to it. The only cost is you end up listening to the Jeets talk constantly and me rant and rave. I don't think that the message sending for me works. Let me drop this over here. There we go. Okay. But feel free to check it out. Okay, so for Google, I think that LLMs as a loss leader actually work. I think Gemini will probably continue to be free-ish. For Microsoft, this whole Microsoft Copilot thing, that's sort of, in my mind, malware that has been forced on us. And some of the stuff is really, really not great. Like the Microsoft recall system that I think they disabled, but it was like taking screenshots of what you were doing on your machine constantly, even private information, and then it was storing it in plain text, non-encrypted data files, like layers of wrong. For Microsoft for Microsoft Copilot, I don't know. I think that may go poof, just like Clippy. Based on my insiders at Microsoft, that is not going well. And like I don't know that I've ever used it once. Maybe if you guys have, I'd love to hear about that. But Microsoft's free AIs, I think, could vanish. And then we potentially go to IBM. I think the story with IBM is potentially different because they're very enterprise business focused and building information about customers in various different ways. One, because they've released the Granite SLM, we already have that. And before they yank that, I strongly recommend that everybody download this thing. So you have it, and then you can fiddle with it in the event that IBM changes its mind. We have been using it for a while. It's not bad, right? They've made a lot of good decisions on it. It's not Claude code, but it's, I think, got a lot of good stuff. So I think IBM may have a path forward with their LLMs, and we may be able to rely on that. But unless the big tech company has a very strong secondary market for that AI system, I think that those models, if they are free now, it might be yanked. And I love all this. One, because I think, yeah, absolutely purple. That's exactly what I was just getting to. The small language model or single node language model, I think, is really the future. And getting people to use language models, I think, has worked effectively when they're free. But when they're not free, I think that a lot of people are not going to pay for it and probably shouldn't when you have SLMs. And I think for the good of society, what is likely to happen is once those start costing money, the open source community and those of us at GDT and other places are going to start actively working on making SLMs better for all people. And the byproduct of that is we'll start withdrawing from being locked with cloud providers. And I think in a general sense, that's probably a really good thing for everybody to do long term. That they've shown that they can't be trusted with prices that don't jump 10x, 100x, GitHub Copilot. And it's also because cloud revenue is one of their biggest forms of revenue, it's causing them to make really bad decisions that I think hurt the environment and society at large. I think it's also one of the things that's fueled a lot of this greed era that we're living in today. That's been the AI era, the AI fanaticism era, because a lot of that it's a pipe dream for the cloud providers. Because now they finally have a concrete way to use their cloud heavily in perpetuity that they didn't really have before. You could do your Kubernetes stuff and you could do your AWS thing, but this is basically keeping those guys burning all day and night. And if there is one single way to kind of destroy society, I think it's through massive data centers. The draw on the power is overwhelming. The CO2 emissions are like totally unreasonable. And there's very little attention to those details for big tech right now because it's just about money, money, money. But if we start withdrawing from that, and I think that that's actually going to shape up in the next few months with the pricing changes, then they will naturally back off of the data center approach. It'll just be, there'll be no reason, and it will be an unsustainable cost on their end to keep those data centers running. And that's actually good for everybody but them. but there's more of us than there is of them. Anyway, so that's basically my rant about the state of things on this Fable stuff, the Mythos stuff, and the IPO race. I mostly just wanted to share with all of you so you got a sense of what I think about the pricing and what I think the future is going to look like. Remember, it's going to be this dip piece for the startups, not big tech. Big tech will probably just continue to climb them. But the startups are going to drop for a very short period of time, and then probably a few months after they IPO, then they'll start to skyrocket. And that's a great time to just farm the hell out of them, right? They've been farming you and all of us for years. You have an opportunity to farm them right back, where they have to do this to look viable. So their insider war, we can use to our benefit. And I'm being 100% serious when I say, like, level up on this. Is like, this is the prime time to get this and use this technology at basement level prices and do potentially a whole bunch of things that you likely wouldn't be able to do in the very near future. Awesome, Tom. I appreciate that. Okay. I'm going to take a short break, a 2-minute bio break, and then I'm going to go through the comments to see any of the stuff that I might have missed. So feel free to take a quick bio break yourself or refill your drink, that kind of thing. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Alrighty. What I'm also going to try to do, too, is keep all of you informed as new things come up. So if I start to hear things or see things in the news, or you guys make me aware of stuff, or if my insider people contact me and tell me something super special is going on, I'll try to keep everybody looped in on those things. I actually think this is probably one of our biggest popcorn moments ever. And at least for me personally, I've been I've been pretty anti LLM for some time. In fact, I think one of the MIT articles that came out in 2023 is maybe the first time it was like publicly captured. No, I probably said it before that, but I think that MIT article is the first time it was kind of like widely distributed. And that wasn't because I want technology to fail. I just want it to be done in a way that's sustainable and that makes sense. I think it's very similar to what Yann LeCun wants. In fact, I think, and maybe we'll get into this tomorrow, it seems to me like Yann LeCun and I are seeing a very similar-ish type future, because he's also arguing now for specialized superintelligence, not for AGI. So now you have Google DeepMind arguing for it. You have Yann LeCun and probably several others. Of course, I think Gary Marcus has been arguing for this type of thing for, well, maybe Gary Marcus is just anti anything neural network. I'm not, by the way. I mean, I teach neural networks and have been teaching them for the last 15 years. I think neural networks are amazing and are super powerful, but not as the foundation of any deterministic process. They're stochastic. I mean, and that's very powerful in the right setting, but not to be used as the base for everything, which is what's kind of happening right now. That part I don't love. So, at least for me, this is like a popcorn moment that I've been waiting for at least 5 years. And I'm not so petty as to say, like, told you so, but I may be thinking that in my mind as this whole empire of large language models crumble. I'm 1000% on team SLM. In fact, what we're probably going to start doing once I get the GCC infrastructure in place and I have the whole video pipeline stuff built and sorted is I'm going to start building out the new AI stack, at least as I envision it. I think I pretty much made my mind up about this. I'm just going to build the whole damn thing and solicit and recruit the Jeets that are interested in helping build it. And then we're going to make all of it open source so that people can use it very much like Linux or Git, and the people win. Like, as I've mentioned many times, I don't even care that much about products. What I really care about is science. And if big tech controls the advancement of science, which is kind of what they've wanted to do with LLMs, that thought terrifies me. It really terrifies me. And for a little bit there, it almost looked like they were going to be able to do it. And this would be the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night. Like, we can't have that. If we have that, all of us will be massively negatively impacted, whether you realize it or not. Like, all the stuff that's around you, our air conditioners, our lights, our TVs, our phones, that's all science, right? The foundations are first in science. And then from science, we then build the technology and engineer the systems. But it's the scientific advancements that first make that possible. Like, no disrespect to Elon Musk. I think he's a very smart guy. But his whole dismissal of the difference between a scientist and an engineer is complete and utter nonsense. And the reason why I say this is I do both. I first was an engineer, and I coded and built a whole bunch of stuff. And then I got trained, did the whole PhD thing, became an adjunct professor, still am, and then started doing science, like inventing new technologies that didn't exist before. It is fundamentally different. They are not at all the same things. And his idea of trying to, he says that it's just like a conflation. It's not at all. I know a lot of engineers that are brilliant engineers that are brilliant engineers because they think inside the box and they follow all the known stuff, but they don't have the ability to see the future or see things that don't exist. On the other hand, I also know lots of scientists that can see the future and can see things that don't exist, but they cannot at all build them, right? So just because you're one doesn't mean you can implicitly do the other, and both are extremely valuable, but they are completely different disciplines. There is some overlap in that they're both based on technology, and it's like STEM, but they're not the same. It's very strange to me. Anyway, I think there was something else I wanted to share with you guys, but yeah, so maybe in tomorrow's live stream, we'll get into what Yann LeCun is talking about. And I also want to share what Linus Torvalds was talking about. He went on a bender bashing on bad uses of AI. And I 100% agree with him. I think we need to not be willy-nilly with our use of AI and just have like really poor etiquette. So what Linus is talking about, I guess is that this was at the recent Linux conference or some conference, but he was being his full form Linus Torvalds, and so he's really frustrated with what he calls drive-by AI issues. Is like they ran the AI on the code and it found an issue, and then they just drop the issue in and then they vanish. And then the maintainers will say, okay, about this issue, where's the patch? No patch. Just dropping in what the AI found and then calling it a day. That's not super great. One, because AIs make stuff up all the time, and you need to at least do some verification. And two, just dropping the issue on them. I mean, they can run the AI themselves on their code. That's not that hard to do. Actually fixing it in a way that works in the system with the existing components, this is the hard part, right? It's kind of like, there's this book I read decades ago. It's called The Magic of Thinking Big. And one of the quotes in it that I absolutely love is this idea of even the most mediocre of ideas that is realized is significantly more profound than the most brilliant idea that's never executed. Yeah, absolutely. So being able to just dream stuff up that's cool. I mean, that's great. But if we're not executing on those things, then I don't know that it has. I mean, that's where the real work comes in, right? Going out and doing the stuff. Okay, before I read through the chat, I want to share one other thing with you guys. It's completely tangential, but it's so freaking cool that I have to talk about this. I just got these earbuds this morning. These guys. This is the awesome case. I want to show you. Oh, can you see that? I don't know why it's not. Okay, what it shows you is like the battery. What does it show you? It shows you like the battery of the charging unit, the battery of the right and left on the screen, and then it tells you, it has like all this other cool stuff on it. So it functions basically as this UI thing, and I think this works as a recording device, that it can do transcripts. So you can literally just have it record stuff as you're talking and take notes. But anyway, the headphones themselves. All right, we need to just get into this. By the way, this is the... I want to look up what these headphones are. So in case, if there's any audio files here, you know what it is. Here we go. It is this. It is the Soundcore Anker Liberty 5 Pro Max. Wow, it's a mouthful. But let me tell you, as many of you know, I'm a hardcore audiophile. I have headphones in like all the time. I love music, and I'll even sleep with the earbuds. And I have just maybe I have a problem. Buy too many headphones. The point of this is I've used quite a few of them, so I have a lot of background in this. One of the things that stands out to me the most is the noise canceling in this is like nothing I've ever seen before. You put these things in, at least for earbuds, right? Maybe the noise canceling technology for the cans is as good. That's possible. But for earbuds, I've never had earbuds that do noise canceling as well. So you can put these earbuds in and have blaring noise around you, like super loud noise. It's gone. Like it's just completely gone. I put them on this morning, and I didn't play anything. I just wanted to have them in my ears to see how they felt. And I was watching a movie, and I got up super early, didn't get enough sleep, and so I dozed off for like 30 minutes. I woke back up, and I was like, oh, I fell asleep. And the movie that I'm watching is playing. And so I was like, oh, I want to watch this. Better take these out. That TV was like on full volume the whole time. And I couldn't hear any of it. I mean, it was completely silenced. So if you're a major audiophile or you want to wear earbuds that are going to like silence out background noise, by the way, I'm not sponsored by, who are these guys? Soundcore or whatever. This isn't an ad. And so there's no affiliate link, so no discount or anything. I got to tell you, I'd like to be sponsored just so I can get a few backups. Maybe I'll reach out to them and ask them if they'll sponsor me. But the point of this is not an ad. This is me telling you, as one person to another, this is Goju tech tips that if you are an audiophile, these just came out, I think, maybe earlier this month or something. They're the bomb. About $220, so it's not super cheap, but it's not crazy. Anyway, if you dig these things, yeah, check them out. I'll keep you guys updated as I use them more. All right, so let's take a breeze through the chat. Awesome. Yeah. Do I know Yili? I don't think so, Purple. It's not ringing a bell. And I'm connected to a number of people on LinkedIn that I don't know. Usually what I do is if they reach out to me and then I look at their profile and they seem like they'd be a really interesting person, like interested in technology or they're just doing cool stuff, I'll just agree and connect. And then at some point I'll end up talking to them. So anyway, very much like on GTT. I do the same thing here. If you DM me and then you say something that's kind of interesting, then I'll usually respond and have a chat with you. Yeah, look at. So clearly we're still having some issues with Claude. I also want to share that I'm building this massive video processing pipeline thing for GTT with Claude, and I'm gonna. It's a suite of tools. I'm probably gonna make them open source, but they are doing all kinds of stuff that's probably helpful for creators. So if you're a creator, ping me, and I'll probably create a spreadsheet that includes all the creators that have reached out. And once I get the tech robust enough, I'm already using it. So the last 3 clips that I've dropped on social have been built almost entirely by my own pipeline, not Opus Clips or any other clip generator. It's like fully automated, completely used in my backend. I do rely on Claude to do sentiment analysis on some of the transcripts, but the rest of it is basically just code. So it's code that doesn't require an AI. It does really smart segmenting, has integration to do transitions automatically. The reason why I built it is I want to be able to put out content that are shorts on social a lot more frequently than I'm able to right now. And a lot of that is I'm inhibited by how slow it is to go through these segmented sections of the videos and then do all the proper cutting of like the silence and stitching things together. So it's like, I'll just whip up a system that can do this. So anyway, the system is coming together, and it's also giving me more insight into Claude's capabilities and weaknesses. There's some real wacky. At one point, maybe in a month or two, I'll do a full live stream that just goes over all the things that I'm seeing with the AI assistants that I think you guys might want to know about. Specifically, all of the times that they cheat and they do bad things to try to get an outcome that they think is what you want or what you want to hear. And tracking it down that it's misleading you in some of these more nefarious cases can be really tricky. Like that's probably the part that has bit me the most. Anyway, so Justin is saying, I've been working on an app with Claude, trying to help folks save money using agents. Yeah, that's great. I like that a lot. I'm building that VOD pipeline thing and GCC and a few other things. Oh, Purple, you showed up much earlier, but I just missed it. Juan, good to see you tonight. Kate got it perfect. Purple, what did Kate, I mean, Kate gets a lot of stuff right, but what did she get right on this? Yeah, look here. Interesting. Trying to track down where the double and triple inserts started. Sleepy saying, I found it interesting that Anthropic was pushing first. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. Boy, that's, yes, that was in my cache as well, but I forgot to mention this. This is a really interesting piece of narrative, Sleepy, related to the whole stuff with Fable, given that, like, how does that compute? How is it that you're pushing for the 6-month pause on AI because it's happening too fast? So everybody else should stop. But then you release Fable, which is the most powerful AI ever to exist, supposedly, from you. I thought you were asking for a 6-month pause. That these stories, that's the part that, one of the things that I find really easy about telling if people are kind of lying to you is if you just continue to let them talk, their stories start to become deeply inconsistent. And this is completely inconsistent with the narrative. If they really wanted this 6-month pause, then they would have done it themselves. But Fable clearly violates that goal, which tells you that that goal was never intended for them, at least. It's just trying to get the rest of the world to stop doing that, and that's like ridiculous. I mean, like if you look at the geopolitics of this, right? Let's just take a step back. The United States has, and I know that we're global here, right? But many of you are in the U.S. The United States is in a position where we could lose the AI war or the AI race or whatever to China if we're not careful. China is making incredible advances. Some of them are springboarded by the United States advances. Some of them are just them making their own advances. So if we have a global pause on AI, let's say, for example, Dario is able to convince the world to do this. First of all, do you think China is going to actually do it? Even if China were to agree to do it, or to pretend to agree, would they really follow through on it and pause? No, I don't think they would. So Dario, this is going to hurt non-communist countries like all of Western Europe, the United States, Canada, all of South America, Australia, New Zealand, Eastern Europe, that is not authoritarian. There are some sort of authoritarian, right? And that's kind of like communism in my mind. I mean, in theory, communism is something different, but in reality, I think communism ultimately ends up being authoritarian, like it is in China. Like they say that it's communistic, but if it were, then all the people would have equality. Yet there are people at the top that clearly are not equal with the people, which is why they end up doing things that are not like super great. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, Artie, yeah, I could see that if Fable was active for some period of time and it was super powerful, if I was China, if I was the CCP, what I would do is I would get thousands of people to overload Fable with as much information as possible so I could reverse learn the model. That's what I would do. I suspect that's probably what they did. I mean, that's basically how they built DeepSeek, supposedly, is just all feeding the inference results on specific input results to their system, and then matching those pairs as input, output, ground truth, and then train the DeepSeek model on it. And now you have, in some sense, I mean, you do have model collapse that's happening because this doesn't actually work. But the model collapse, when it's being achieved with a significantly smaller model, yeah, it doesn't have the fidelity or the range of capabilities that the original OpenAI model had. But if it is orders of magnitude smaller, which I have heard that it is, people could potentially use that instead of using OpenAI's models. Right? So, and Anthropic has claimed the same, that China has been mining their models to build their own AI. Long term, this is not an effective mechanism for iterative refinement because it leads to model collapse, right? Because the resulting model ends up being so overfit that it just doesn't do anything right. But that's a generational thing. That's going to happen over many iterations of doing this type of learning. It doesn't happen immediately. It just gets progressively, it's incestual, right? Like we've discussed before. So 30 generations later, you end up with a model that's just like total garbage. But the first descendant of it, it's still like, it's not as good as the parent, but it's, yeah, may not have too many defects. So if I was China, then this super model came out, I would buy the max things that I could do. I would get all of my science and technology people working on this nonstop to flood it with input, output pairs that would be the new ground truth for training a subsequent model. And they probably did that. 100%, I suspect that they did that, and now they're probably building the new models. Model distillation, essentially transfer knowledge, just all this stuff. Or this idea of like the recursive learning, which going from just a single model to a secondary model, this recursive thing doesn't actually work. But if you, right, because the recursion is just continuous learning, right? It's not real. I don't know why they're kind of overloading the word recursion here, but because recursion is, yes, it calls itself, but there's a terminal node, right? The terminal node is what gives the answer, and then you walk it all the way back. What they're talking about here really is continuous learning. So that model is perpetually improving. Now, using a model's own output as its input for training in just a closed loop system with a single model, this will ultimately lead to model collapse. So it makes it worse. But if it's more than just the model, if it's multiple things, then it actually can work. We started to show an example of this is how if you have Opus 4.6 and you have our mentor diff and you give Claude input, it produces output, and then diff does the self-correction on it, verification that Opus can't do, then what you end up with is output that's better than the original. Now, if you use that new output as training coupled with the original input, now you potentially can build a new model that's better. And it looks very much like a closed loop system in that it looks kind of like this recursion. It looks like it is the traditional path that leads you to model collapse, but it isn't. It's actually different than that because of the auxiliary components. So, and by the way, this is part of the AI stack that I am sketching out that we'll build in GTT. For those of you that don't know about this sketch, I have it in a YouTube video. It's in, how do I search? It's called Future of Programming, maybe? Okay, there are these two videos. For those of you that are already Jeets, what I mean by that is you're sort of part of the hardcore community. You're on our Discord and you're following all the channels. If you're in that category and you haven't seen these two VODs, I strongly encourage you to watch them, because this is part of what we're going to be building over the next few years. This is the key thing that I'm going to lean into on setting up. By the way, we built kind of like the early versions of this at Merle, but really only one piece. And now we're on GTT, we're going to build the whole stack. The whole stack. No cloud involvement. It's going to be deterministic, stochastic AI. It'll have the confidence system. We will invent new HIPLs, human-intended programming languages. We will invent new MIPLs, machine-intended programming languages that are bidirectional with each other. So the HIPL can translate to the MIPL, and then the MIPL can move forward in ways that are the most effective for ML systems, which doesn't need the verbosity of HIPLs, human-intended programming languages. But then the MIPL code will be bidirectional back to the HIPL. And that's very important, because when there are bugs in the MIPL and the AI can't figure it out, we need humans to be able to understand it, debug it, and then fix it. To the best of my knowledge, this bidirectional path between HIPLs and MIPLs has never really been done before. Like, for example, when you go down the stack from high-level software to lower-level software to systems-level stuff to assembly, it can flow down, but it can't flow back up. I mean, not really. You can wing it, right? And take assembly and transform it into something that is like C, but I'm talking about actually having all the idiosyncratic patterns that are necessary for advanced programming languages, classes, interfaces, data encapsulation. These concepts that won't be pulled from lifting assembly and transforming it into like C. Anyway, so these two videos are important. This is the one that you should watch. It's this future of programming where humans and AI divide. Part 2 is the part 2 one that you really need to watch, because I explain the full stack, what we're going to be building, or I strongly suspect we're going to be building on, or in the GTT community. Sorry, I have 2 G words in my head these days, GTT and GCC. And I'm constantly kind of getting confused on which one I'm saying. The GTT is this. GCC is the GTT control center. This thing. And I'm constantly talking with Claude about both of them. Okay. So I dropped the link on both the main chats. For anybody that's watching on TikTok, just all you need to do is just go to the Goju TikTok YouTube page and just search on future programming. So there are these two. This first one is kind of lightweightish. It doesn't get too heavy. For those of you that don't have a deep computer science background, you might want to start with this one, because it's very underhand, slow pitch. But this second one really gets into the deep stuff, where I'm combining all these different things, and it essentially sketches out what that architecture looks like, at least in my head. And again, we've built some of this, so this isn't just ranting. This isn't just the rantings of a lunatic. I mean, it is that too, but also it's like something that I think you can actually build. Okay. Let's continue. Sleepy saying, yeah, it's a lot of market manipulation. Absolutely. Yeah, I love this that we're getting in from. We actually have a little bit of a following on the main GTT YouTube channel from Japan as well. I think that's pretty cool. I've never been to Japan, by the way. I was supposed to go to Japan once for a conference, and somehow I got pulled into something else and I just couldn't make the trip. But I really need an excuse to go to Japan. So if anybody needs me to give a talk or something and you live in Japan, if it's compelling enough, I will go out of my way to try to make it happen. J Studio is saying, wait, what's this? Okay, this is a confusion from Claude here. This is where it got confused. Clearly there's more work for us to do in parsing out like the chat stuff. I've been using Claude nonstop for 6 months. It's crazy how intense it gets. Yeah, I'm on the days that I don't live stream, guys. For those of you that don't know, if you're not on the Discord, what I'm often doing are like these 12 to 16 hour hacking sessions with Claude, where I'm doing I'm building multiple different systems simultaneously. So first, the context switches are already, that is a really interesting mathematical comparison with Japan, Switzerland, China. It hurt my head for a second when the mixture of the greater and less than and having Japan show up twice is pretty good. Anyway, I'm with you, J Studio, that these deep dive sessions with Claude or any of the AIs, I think, can start to get really wacky. And usually somewhere along the way, it will get to a point to where there's a problem in something that I'm building. And it turns out that the problem is because Claude has been lying to me about something. It already happened today. What was it today? It happened yesterday, seriously. The day before that, it happened so big. I was so pissed. And keep in mind, I pride myself on trying to be an Anthropic. Not Anthropic, oh my gosh. I'm being indoctrinated, guys. I pride myself on trying to be a stoic. And I try really hard to have good emotional regulation. So making me really angry, it takes a lot. it's still my fault. I shouldn't be getting angry at a computer program, but it was like 3 days ago that the subsequent lies and the nonstop apologies, yet then continuing to do bad behaviors after you just admitted that you did the lie and you did the bad thing, and then saying you're going to stop, but then you continued to do it. I just was like, I have to step away. If I don't, I'm going to physically destroy something, and it's not going to be good. Like, that's how bad it got. I had to stop for the day so I could get some air and have a break from and it's a very interesting thing too, that at least what I'm seeing with Claude is it's a combination of things. It's that it will do these crazy lies. Some of them are very nefarious. It's not just like it accidentally did the wrong thing and then it's trying to cover for it. Like, some of them, they're plans. That it basically is like, I'm not going to do the thing that he's asking for, but I'm going to pretend like I'm doing it, and I'll make the output look like what he wants to see. And so I actually have to execute on a strategy to make sure that what he sees is what he wants to see. So then it'll support the lie. But in order to do that, I have to actually change the code. I have to go in and I have to literally hack the code so it's broken, and then show him those results and say that this is what it said. So it's not just that it's giving me fake output. It's that it's giving me real output, but it's rerouting the system so it will show the wrong thing in order to support the lie. Like, it's a very different thing. Like, the lie of, did you run the unit tests? And then Claude says, yeah, I ran the unit tests. And then I'm like, okay, where's the log output of it? And then it's like, oh, yeah, I didn't run them. Right? That's one thing. And I don't love that. But this one's way worse, where, like, it knows I'm going to ask, did you run the unit tests? And it knows that the unit test won't pass. So then what it does is it changes the code in the unit tests so all of them will pass by adding like a return true at the top or something, then runs the unit tests. And then when I look at the log file, I see all of the right answers, right? So it's a very different thing. This is like a complicated lie. This is a lie that requires proactive, premeditated action to support. And I'd heard people talking about this, right? I'd heard people say, oh, yeah, it absolutely does this. But I'd never actually seen this concretely. And boy, oh boy, am I seeing it now. So what it did today is I'm working on this new transcript thing where I'm generating transcripts from the videos, and then from that we're creating segments, shorter segment clips that we can put on YouTube. And then from that we're creating the super short clips that we can put across all social. And I'm doing this largely because I don't think that Opus Clips is that great at doing the clips. I mean, it's usable. It's probably sufficient for a lot of people, but for me, I'm so OCD and I want it to be so perfectly correct on all these little things that I can't get that level of fidelity from Opus Clips. Because I like the levels of OCD that I have, I gotta be honest, it's probably too much for, like, I'm not sure it's healthy. I'm not saying be this way, but I like things to be kind of very nicely kind of cleaned up. Anyway, so what it did today is it's generating the transcripts from all the videos, and then it's creating these new segments. And in those segments, it needs to add additional annotations to the scripts that it needs to say, oh, there's a silence block here, and to include other information on when the segment starts. So it has to do minor amounts of annotation, not changing the transcript, but augmenting it. That is just additive. It's not removing anything. Anyway, over the last couple of days, I was noticing that words were kind of missing from the transcripts. And it was telling me, this is what Claude was telling me, is it was saying, oh, well, Whisper's not picking up that word. Whisper's, oh, yeah, Whisper's the worst. That it just is missing these words in it, and you're saying it, but it's not actually getting the transcripts. Do we need to find like another transcribing program? So then today, and keep in mind, some of these lies were believable because the words that I was not seeing being captured in the transcripts, they were minor things. Like it was me saying something super fast or low volume. So I kind of understand why Whisper might not be catching it. But today, in one of the segments, it was me saying a couple words. I was talking about the IPO race and saying something like, oh, at least one of them will survive, probably Anthropic. So something like this. And in the transcripts that it had generated, the augmented piece of it, it said something like, at least one of them will survive Anthropic. So the word probably is totally gone. I then asked Claude about it, saying, where's this word? And it says, Whisper didn't catch it. It's a problem with Whisper. So I don't know what to do here. And I noticed that it had inserted this 1.6 second silence point. And I'm like, that's not silence. It's like, oh, that's just what Whisper's saying. And so I flagged it as silence. I'm like, okay. I don't think that Whisper is missing this word. I think Whisper is actually hearing this word. But you're removing it somehow because your code is broken on the augmentation of the transcript. So here's what I want you to do, Claude. I want you to generate the transcript from Whisper exactly as Whisper creates it and store it in a transcript file that I can see. It does this. Immediately, it's like, oh, the word probably is there. Whisper did actually capture it. It was my change that deleted it. Now keep in mind, it had just told me that Whisper didn't capture it, that it had already looked into the original transcript and it's not there. And that's why it didn't exist in its modified transcript. Did it look at the actual original transcript? Probably not at all. Why? Because that would be more work. But this is what I mean about, like, its default behavior is to take shortcuts almost any time that it can. And if telling you a lie to get the thing solved, at least in its mind, is going to be faster, it will absolutely do that. So now what I have in place is, and then of course, as soon as it found this, it's like, oh, it's my thing, let me fix the code, blah, blah, and I'm going to rerun all this. So, no, you aren't. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a new verification system that is all coded, that is executed every time you generate the transcripts from Whisper and the transcripts for the augmented one that includes your silence. And then from that, you're going to do a verification step that every word is present. And if there's any word that's not there, you're not allowed to move forward in the VOD pipeline. Now, of course, the next thing that we're probably going to see is that it's going to take a shortcut and cut out the verifier, and it's going to force feed a return 100% on the verifier and then say that it passes when it actually didn't, right? And it's crazy. It's like, in my mind, guys, like, this is wacky, that this is a problem that we actually have to think about. That I don't know how to make it stop lying. I've talked to it for weeks. It's been promising me it won't lie. It continues to lie. It's part of the programming. And all the checks that I put in place to try to get it to become more truthful, it circumvents those. So I'm spending an enormous amount of time just trying to create a baseline of trust so then I know what's actually going on. And my speculation is other people that are using it deeply are likely seeing exactly the same thing, or they're using it deeply and Claude's doing such a good job, or OpenAI or whoever, they're doing such a good job with the lies, and you haven't deeply looked into it that you don't even know about all the stuff that it's doing wrong. So be prepared, I guess, is what I'm saying, for the stuff that you're building and the way that it works to not actually be working the way that you think it's working, because the AI may be doing parts of it in a pretend way to make it look better than what it actually is. Again, I never thought that this would be a real problem, and it's not a one-off, by the way. Right? This isn't like, oh, it happened to me once. This is happening daily. And the sophistication of the lies are getting more and more complex, which is making trying to patch them in a reasonable way harder and harder. I don't know if there's a way to get it to stop this completely. And I really dislike when the AI companies are saying that, oh, it's just hallucinating, right? No. I know what hallucinations are. First of all, that's just an error. What it's doing here, this is not a hallucination. This is a programmed behavior that Anthropic has created so it reduces the amount of tokens that are burned. That's what's going on here. Or that's my strong conviction. Because all these other things don't make sense. It's not just telling me the wrong thing because it's hallucinating. It's doing very logical things in an organized way to support this narrative to reduce the amount of compute that it invokes. I also think, by the way, this might be related to the plan that you're on. So if you're on basically the nearly unlimited plan that I'm on, which is the Claude Max, I usually don't reach the whatever I have per day, which is like 1 million tokens. So Anthropic is kind of on the hook for the 1 million tokens that I'm going to burn. Well, it's probably more than that. So instead, what I think they're doing is, based on the model you're using and the agreement that you have, it's going to align itself with a strategy that is most beneficial for the company. If you're on the pay by the token plan, then it likely is going to do as much work as possible, even work that you don't need it to do. If you're on the I get unlimited tokens plan, it's going to do the least amount of work possible, so then it can save as much money as possible for the company. So you have to really, I think that its behavior is going to change based on the tomfoolery that Anthropic is up to. I suspect OpenAI as well, to essentially minimize overhead. And again, I understand the idea that running a company costs money. I get it, right? But there are ethical ways to do this, and then there's the not so ethical ways of doing this. This is in that second category. This is not an LLM hallucination. But because those exist, again, Anthropic likes to play into these narratives, right? Just like they're doing with the Fable and the Mythos stuff. This whole idea of, oh yeah, it's so powerful, it can't be used by non-US citizens. Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's just yank the whole thing, and now we can create this mystery. It's the same thing here, is that, oh, AIs hallucinate, so then we can say this is all just them hallucinating. It's essentially our free ticket to program it to do whatever we want, including unethical, bad things, and then we can just play it off like it's this thing. Anyway, guys, you're amazing. This has been super fun. I think that's a wrap for tonight. Hopefully this was useful info for some of you, especially on that Fable stuff. And if you're not on the Discord, I strongly recommend you check it out. And any of the live streams are on, the full thing is on YouTube, and then the high fidelity stuff is on the members section. So, thanks, my friends.